And let's get right to the breaking news coming out of the first hearing before the judge in the Trump election interference case. CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider is on the story for us. Jessica, first of all, tell us about this newly released protective order and what else happened in today's hearing.
Yeah, well, this was the first that we've seen of Judge Tanya Chutkan in this case. She took charge immediately. She did not give prosecutors that broad protective order that they wanted, but she was firm with Trump and his team that they are not to disclose sensitive information, including material about the grand jury or search warrants. So that is all what's part of this protective order that she issued just a little while ago. And during the hearing itself, she gave several warnings to Trump and his team. And she said this. She said the fact that he is running a political campaign currently has to yield to the administration of justice. And if that means he can't say exactly what he wants to say in a political speech, that is just how it's going to have to be. So because of that, she says she's going to be carefully scrutinizing any statements from Trump and his team. She basically said that anything that could be interpreted as intimidating witnesses or prejudicial to potential jurors, it could really threaten this entire judicial process in this case as we move toward trial. So what's under these terms that prosecutors are having this protective order? Well, under the terms, they're prepared to begin handing over material today. And what that material includes is 11.6 million documents. It includes hundreds of recordings of witness interviews. And it's those recordings, part of which Trump is prohibited from disclosing publicly. So, Wolf, we'll see how quickly this case could go to trial. The prosecution wants it to start January 2nd. Trump's legal team, starting next week, will propose their start date. It's likely that they'll propose it after the 2024 election. But at the rate that Judge Chutkan is moving now, she'll likely want to hew closer to the prosecution's proposed January date. But we'll see how this ultimately moves forward to a trial. Wolf?
All right, Jessica, thank you. Jessica Schneider reporting. Let's get some more on all these major developments. Our legal experts are joining us, including George Conway and Carl Racine, and CNN political analyst Maggie Haberman is with us as well. Carl, you know Judge Chutkan well. How do you think she's going to deal with all of this?
Well, I think she's been dealing with this entire case in an exceptional, well-reasoned, balanced manner. And what you saw today was a split decision. She did not give the government all that it wanted. The government actually sought to restrict the ability of Mr. Trump to analyze the evidence without his lawyers. She struck that down. She permits President Trump to access this evidence. It's really important that he have access to the evidence anytime he wants without a lawyer present. Yet she's going to make sure that witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, or any interference with the administration of justice is not going to occur on her watch.
What do you think, George? Is this a five-page protective order, as it's called, a reasonable document, and you think Trump will actually abide by what's written in this?
Well, I don't know if I don't know if he'll abide by it. He has trouble abiding by rules and laws, as we well know. I mean, the protective order shouldn't be that big a deal. It normally is not a big deal. We have them in civil cases and criminal cases all the time when people are producing, one side is producing sensitive information pretrial to the other. So I can't imagine that Judge Chutkan approved something that wasn't perfectly within the realm of possibility. But you understand, it's understandable that the Justice Department would seek as much as it could, given who the defendant is. And it's very important to remember, I mean, Sam Bankman-Friedman was ordered by a judge in New York. He's going to be ordered to go back to jail because he gave some materials to the New York Times. This is very serious stuff to violate a protective order, and it was good that Judge Chutkan warned Trump today about that.
Yeah, it's a very significant development in reading, and it's fascinating reading once you read these 5 pages. Indeed. Maggie, in court today, the judge also warned Trump to be careful what he says publicly about this case on the heels of his Truth Social post saying, and I'm quoting him now, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you," all in caps. But can Trump really contain himself?
I don't think we've ever seen any evidence that Trump is eager to contain himself. There are moments, Wolf, when his back has been against the wall, when he has been better than others, but he likes testing the bounds and seeing what he can get away with. It would not surprise me. And again, we have no idea what he's going to do. We know the things that he says upset his lawyers. We know that they are frustrating to his lawyers because they can't control him. Donald Trump has a history of testing the boundaries. And so I think that you can see a scenario where he will continue to say provocative things online to see if the judge will turn away from it. there are other defendants who, if they were in, similar cases, obviously there is no parallel to this with the former president, but other people who have been connected to January 6th related cases have not gotten as much leeway in certain aspects as Trump has. And so I think it is very likely he will test the bounds, and then we'll see what the judge does.
We'll see what she does indeed. You know, Carl, Judge Chutkan says that Trump is a criminal defendant before he's a political candidate. Is that true?
I think in this courtroom it is true. What Judge Chutkan is focused on is making sure that the evidence in this case, particularly the sensitive evidence in this case, is tried in the courtroom, not on the campaign trail. That's an important distinction, and you better believe that the judge is going to be quite observant of Mr. Trump's conduct after this protective order has been entered.
We'll see how he behaves and how he responds. Maggie, I understand you have some new reporting that drives home just how much Trump's political and legal futures are intertwined right now. What can you tell us about the impact these cases are having on the former president?
Sure. So, Wolf, my colleague Shane Goldmacher and I took a look at Trump's financial situation and how impacted his political orbit. That's his super PAC, that's the campaign, that's Save America, the political action committee that's been footing his legal bills, or the bulk of them, have been strained by these trials. Also the fact that as a criminal defendant, he will be required, if these trials go ahead before Election Day, and after Election Day would be the same thing, but he has to physically be present. He will not be able to be on the campaign trail for those days. These cases are consuming a lot of resources and a lot of time, and he is facing a potential cash crunch. He is facing the likely prospect he will have to start footing his own legal bills, at least to some extent. And he has said publicly he's willing to put in whatever campaign money he has to toward the actual political race. He did do that a bit in 2016, but commensurate with the overall amount he spent, it was relatively small. We'll see what happens here.
And George, do today's events suggest to you that the judge might rule for a very speedy trial, maybe along the lines of January 2024, the timeline proposed by the government?
Well, I do think she's going to move expeditiously. I think the way she handled this dispute, the protective order dispute this week, by getting the parties in really very fast and denying a motion to extend the briefing time, I think she's going to move this case pretty fast. Whether she grants, I don't know that she'll grant January 2024. I think it's sometimes when you're litigating, prosecutors will do this and they will ask for more than they can think that they probably will get from the judge, in the hope that the judge splits the difference and gives them something, not so bad, but pretty good.
Carl, how do you think the judge will react, will rule eventually on a trial date?
To be sure, no one knows, of course. January 2nd seems a little early to me, given that we're talking about $11.6 million documents that'll be given over to the defense right now. I think it's interesting to look at that March date that DA Bragg has. He's indicated recently that he'd be open to talking to other prosecutors and perhaps rearranging that date. March 24 sounds like a good date on the January 6th trial to me.
We shall see, guys. Thank you. Maggie, final thoughts from you. What should we be looking for next?
Next, we're going to see again whether Trump does something that the judge considers violative of this order on social media. We look for what Trump says this weekend when he's in Iowa. We look at the next debate and the first debate, and whether Trump actually goes. But this is, Wolf, we've never seen anything like this. This is a series of legal actions wrapped around a political campaign. This is not a normal political season. Trump obviously is using this campaign as something of a shield. We've been talking about that long before he actually got in the race. It's part of why he got in the race as early as he did, and also to freeze the field. But we should be looking for everything that he says about these cases, any change in language, any way that he handles it differently, and again, what the judges in the cases do.